Part 1 Ampere. The funeral. The sound came first raw, piercing, and impossible to ignore. Max's bark tore through the solemn hush of the Norfolk City Memorial Funeral Home, like a siren shattering the night. Mourners flinched. The minister's voice faltered mid-prayer. A widow's sobs caught in her throat. At the front of the hall, the mahogany casket of Chief Robert Hale gleamed under the muted lights, draped with flowers and medals. And before it stood Max, the German shepherd everyone thought was merely grieving, his body trembling, hackles raised, barking with a desperation that chilled the marrow of every man and woman present. "Somebody get that dog out of here!" Deputy Chief Alan Parker barked, his face red with anger. Two uniformed officers moved forward, but Max lunged, yanking free of their grip. The force of his leap toppled an arrangement of lilies, petals scattering across the polished floor. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Anna Hale, the chief's widow, pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Detective John Carter had seen Max at crime scenes before. He knew the dog's instincts, knew the difference between sorrow and alarm. What he saw now wasn't grief, it was an alert. Max wasn't mourning, he was warning. "Wait!" Carter's voice cut through the chaos as Max clawed and tore at the silk lining of the coffin. "Open it! Open the casket now!" The room froze. For a moment, only Max's growls filled the air. Parker's eyes blazed with fury. "This is outrageous! Show some respect, detective!" But Anna Hale's voice wavered, strong despite her tears. "Do it, please." The funeral director hesitated, hands trembling as he undid the brass latches. The heavy lid creaked open, and then came the gasp, the kind that seems to suck the air out of a room. Chief Robert Hale lay not in the peace of death, but in the fragile limbo of the living. His chest rose, almost imperceptibly. His lips trembled. "There's a pulse," whispered Dr. Ross, the county medical examiner, rushing forward with her fingers at his neck. Her eyes widened. Faint, but it's there. Chaos erupted. Some screamed, others prayed. Anna collapsed to her knees, half sobbing, half laughing with wild relief. Max barked triumphantly, tail whipping against the floor, but Carter didn't celebrate. He felt only a cold shiver creep down his spine. If Hale was alive, then who wanted him buried as if he were dead? Hours earlier, Detective Carter had sat alone in his cramped office, case files spread like the wreckage of a storm. At 46, he bore the look of a man who had seen too much. Lines etched deep from laughter, long faded, grief freshly carved by loss. His wife Emma had died of cancer 3 years before, leaving him with a house too large and nights too quiet. To the city, Robert Hale was his chief. To Carter, he was more. At 16, Carter had been a troubled kid with a rap sheet waiting to be written. Caught stealing from a corner market, he should have been processed and forgotten. Instead, Officer Hale had taken him home, sat him down at a dinner table, and offered him a choice: community service, weekly check-ins, and a chance to turn his life around. That night, over meatloaf and mashed potatoes, Carter's life had been rerouted. Hale had been the father figure he never had, the man who believed in him when no one else did. "You've got good instincts, son," Hale had told him years later, when Carter pinned on his detective's badge. "Trust them, even when everyone tells you you're wrong." And those instincts told Carter something now, because Hale wasn't supposed to die. Not like this. The official call had come at 6:42 p.m. Officer Jenny Ramirez's voice had cracked as she told him Chief Hale had collapsed at home. Paramedics said heart attack. Anna found him on the couch, groceries still unpacked by the door. Carter had refused to believe it. The man ran 5 miles every morning. Just that same day, over coffee, he'd laughed with Carter about retirement being a decade away. Impossible. Yet by the time Carter arrived at Norfolk City Memorial Funeral Home, the hall was already filled, the casket already prepared, Parker already moving things along with unusual haste, too unusual. Funerals for officers, especially the chief, didn't happen this fast. Protocol demanded investigation, autopsy, respect for procedure. But Parker had brushed it off, insisting it was for Anna's sake, to spare her prolonged pain. Now, staring down at the casket that was never meant to be closed, Carter knew his instincts had been right. Hale's survival was no miracle accident. It was sabotage narrowly undone by the only creature who refused to stay silent, Max. The German shepherd who had once served as Hale's canine partner, injured in the line of duty and retired to become family. The dog Hale had saved, who had in turn just saved him. Carter looked at Anna, her face streaked with tears but glowing with hope. Then he looked at Parker, rigid, pale, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Fear, anger, guilt. Carter's pulse quickened. Something darker than grief lurked in Norfolk City. Something that had tried to bury the truth along with its chief. And now, with Hale clinging to life and Max refusing to let go, the first threads of a conspiracy had begun to unravel. Carter tightened his jaw. He had promised Hale once to trust his instincts. Tonight, those instincts told him the funeral was not an end. It was the beginning. Part 1. B. Secrets Uncovered. The funeral home was chaos, but in the hours that followed, chaos gave way to whispers. Norfolk City was buzzing with disbelief. The chief had been declared dead, yet he still breathed. A miracle, some said. A scandal, others muttered. For John Carter, it was neither. It was a warning shot. By midnight, Chief Hale had been rushed to Norfolk City General Hospital, barely clinging to life. He lay in the ICU, machines beeping steadily, a team of doctors working to stabilize him. Anna never left his side. And Max, after some protest from staff, was finally allowed to curl up beneath the bed, his eyes watchful, his breaths rising and falling in sync with his master's. Carter stood at the foot of the bed, exhaustion weighing on him like a second skin. He replayed the evening over and over, Parker pushing for a hasty funeral, paramedics who hadn't demanded an autopsy, Hale's body nearly sealed away forever, too many irregularities. When Dr. Elizabeth Ross, the county medical examiner, appeared at his side, her expression was grim. "I wasn't called officially," she whispered, "but I examined what I could. There's something wrong with the story of a heart attack. Hale's medical history was clean. No warning signs. And," she leaned closer, "I found a puncture mark near his collarbone, faint but distinct. It didn't look like anything from routine medical treatment." Carter's jaw tightened. "Injection?" Ross nodded. "A controlled dose of something rare, potent enough to slow respiration and heartbeat, make him appear clinically dead if examined in a hurry." Carter exhaled slowly, which is exactly what happened. Across the room, Max stirred, his ears twitching, as though he too sensed the truth. By dawn, Carter knew he couldn't ignore his instincts. He left the hospital in silence, driving through streets still damp from last night's rain. Norfolk City was a city scarred by factory closures, poverty, and drugs. Chief Hale had fought hard to keep it from collapsing into rot, and that fight, Carter realized, was the reason someone wanted him gone. Carter returned to his office, where Hale's desk lamp still glowed from the night before. Files were scattered across the surface, surveillance reports, financial records, coded notes. Carter recognized Hale's neat, disciplined handwriting in the margins. He sat down, rubbing his eyes, and flipped open the top file. The heading chilled him. Operation Clean Sweep. Inside were photographs of warehouse meetings, transcripts of wiretaps, and diagrams of a network that reached beyond Norfolk City's streets. Drug routes, shell companies, payments funneled overseas. And then something stranger, a ledger filled with numbers too large for the city's modest economy. Carter traced a finger over one entry, his throat tightening. $200 million. Swiss account. Beneficiary. Confidential. $200 million. Enough to buy the city 10 times over. Pinned to the inside cover of the folder was a smaller envelope. Carter tore it open. Out slid an aged piece of parchment, brittle and yellow, marked with faded ink. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a sketch arcs, dotted lines, a series of symbols. But Carter recognized the care in Hale's notes. Not just money. Something older. Something hidden. Carter frowned. A map? Here? In the middle of drug case files? The office door creaked. Carter's hand shot to his holster, but it was only Anna. Her eyes were swollen from sleeplessness, her hands clutching her late husband's jacket like a lifeline. He was working late, she whispered. Always in this office. He wouldn't tell me why, but I knew he was carrying something heavy. Her gaze fell to the papers on the desk. You've found it, haven't you? Carter hesitated, then slid the ledger and the parchment halfway across the table. Anna's face went pale. He told me once, she said slowly, that the past never stays buried. I thought he was talking about the city. I never imagined. Her voice broke. John, what is this? Carter met her eyes. It's why someone wanted him silenced, and why they almost succeeded. Max padded forward, pressing his muzzle into Anna's hand. She stroked his fur absently, tears slipping down her cheeks. Robert saved this city his whole life, and they tried to bury him like garbage. Not yet, Carter said firmly. Not while he's still breathing. Not while we still have this. He tapped the ledger and the map. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain tapping against the office window. Then, Carter made his choice. He would follow Hale's trail wherever it led, through money, through lies, through history itself. Because somewhere in Norfolk City, hidden beneath the weight of corruption and betrayal, was not only a conspiracy worth killing for, but a secret worth dying to protect. Part 1. C. Shadows in the Funeral Home. The storm outside had eased by evening, but inside Memorial Funeral Home, the air was thick with unease. Word had spread that Chief Hale was alive. Not stable, not safe, but alive. The staff moved in hushed tones, glancing nervously at the viewing room, where only hours before they had nearly sealed him away. Detective Carter refused to leave. He sat in a hard wooden chair in the corner. Max curled at his feet, both man and dog unwilling to break their vigil. Hale had been taken to the hospital, but Carter stayed behind. Something about this place, this hurried funeral, gnawed at him. Too many unanswered questions lingered within these walls. Around midnight, the funeral home grew still. Most staff had retired. The hallways darkened except for a single lamp burning by the guest book. The silence was broken only by the occasional creak of old wood and Max's restless shifting. Then, Max stiffened. His ears shot up, a low growl rumbling from his chest. Carter's hand instinctively dropped to his holster. Easy, boy, he whispered. What do you hear? The dog's gaze fixed on a far corner of the viewing room, where the shadows pooled deepest. Who's there? Carter called out, rising to his feet. For a moment, only silence answered. Then, slowly, a figure detached itself from the darkness. A man medium height, coat collar turned up, hat pulled low. His voice was smooth, tinged with an accent Carter couldn't place. My apologies, Detective. I didn't mean to startle you. I came to pay my respects privately. An old friend of Robert's. Carter didn't relax. Visiting hours ended hours ago. How did you get in? The young lady at reception was kind enough to let me through a side entrance, the man replied easily, though his eyes darted past Carter toward the empty casket. Max's growl deepened, hackles bristling. Carter kept his stance firm. Your name? The man hesitated only a fraction before answering. Marshall, James Marshall. Robert and I served together years ago. Carter studied him closely, military precision in the way he stood. Eyes too sharp, too calculating for a grieving friend. Funny, Carter said quietly. I don't recall Hale ever mentioning you. We lost touch, Marshall said smoothly. He reached into his coat pocket. Max barked sharply, lunging forward. Carter raised his weapon. Hands where I can see them. Marshall slowly withdrew a business card, holding it between two fingers. Just my contact information. Perhaps we can speak tomorrow about Robert's legacy. Before Carter could respond, a sound interrupted them. A faint thump, subtle but distinct. It came from the casket itself. Max whirled, barking frantically, claws scraping against the polished wood. Carter's heart stopped. He hadn't imagined it. There was movement. Marshall's face went pale. Without another word, he turned sharply and strode for the side exit. By the time Carter regained his bearings, the man had vanished into the rain-soaked night. Carter hurried to the casket, palms slick with sweat. Max pawed and whined. Desperate, Carter pressed his hands against the lid. He prayed it was exhaustion, twisting his senses. But no, there it was again. A tremor, a whisper of resistance against the stillness. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Dr. Ross. "Detective," her voice crackled, urgent. "I've been reviewing the paramedics' report. It doesn't add up. If Hale was injected with what I suspect, the effects could wear off unpredictably. He might not be stable yet. He could wake or relapse without warning." Carter's pulse raced. He glanced down at Max, whose frantic eyes mirrored his own. "He already has," Carter muttered. The rest of the night passed in a blur of tension. Carter made notes about the intruder, Marshall, if that was even his name. He replayed every detail, the evasive answers, the way the timer man had stared at the casket. The sudden flight when the sound emerged. Whoever he was, he hadn't come to mourn. He'd come to confirm something, or to finish it. By dawn, the funeral home stirred again. Staff bustled in, preparing for the rescheduled service. Anna arrived with her sister, her face drawn, but her spirit unbroken. Deputy Chief Parker followed, his expression carefully composed. When he saw Carter, surprise flickered briefly across his features. "You stayed the night?" Parker asked. "I wanted to make sure everything was properly respected," Carter said evenly. Max barked once, sharp and accusing. Anna knelt to stroke the dog's head, offering Carter a grateful smile. "Robert would want him here. Max belongs with us." Parker's jaw tightened. "That dog has caused nothing but disruption. He should be taken home." "No," Anna said firmly. "He stays." As the preparations continued, Carter kept his eyes on Parker. Every gesture, every word felt rehearsed. Too smooth, too clean. When the hour of the service neared, mourners began to file in once more. Officers in their dress blues, city officials in dark suits, neighbors carrying flowers. The hall filled with the heavy weight of ceremony. And then, as the pallbearers stepped toward the casket, Max erupted again. His barking was not grief, but alarm, urgent, desperate. He lunged, teeth sinking into the draped silk, tearing it free. "Control that animal!" someone shouted. Parker reached for his ceremonial sidearm. "Enough! Get that dog out of here!" But Carter stepped forward, voice ringing out over the panic. "Number Max is trained to detect danger. He's telling us something's wrong." Anna's tearful voice joined his. "If John says we need to open it, then open it." The room fell silent, every eye fixed on the casket. Carter's heart pounded, because this time there would be no denying what they found inside. Part 1. D. The Pulse of Truth. The silence was unbearable. Every mourner, every officer, every member of the community in that room held their breath as the funeral director's trembling hands fumbled with the brass latches of the casket. Max had gone still now, his body rigid, eyes burning into the polished wood as if he could will it open himself. With a reluctant creak, the lid lifted. Gasps tore through the crowd. Chief Robert Hale lay inside, not in the repose of death, but trembling faintly with the fragile rhythm of life. His chest rose shallowly. His lips quivered. "Doctor." Ross shoved through the crowd, her training overriding ceremony. She pressed fingers against Hale's neck. For 10 endless seconds, nothing but silence and the pounding hearts of those watching. Then her eyes widened. "There's a pulse," she said sharply. "Weak, but it's there." The room erupted. Mourners surged forward, disbelief colliding with hysteria. Anna collapsed to her knees, her hands reaching for her husband, laughter and sobs spilling out together. "Robert! Oh my God, Robert!" Max barked furiously, his tail slamming against the floor as though to announce his triumph, but Carter's eyes locked onto Parker. The deputy chief's face had drained of color, his polished composure cracking for the first time. His mouth worked silently, then snapped shut again, jaw clenching. He's not relieved, Carter thought. He's terrified. "Back up, everyone," Dr. Ross commanded. "He needs air. We need paramedics here. Now." Officers scrambled for their radios. Carter lifted his phone, barking into it for an ambulance. Within minutes, the shriek of sirens cut through the still morning, growing louder, closer. Paramedics burst through the doors, wheeling in a gurney. They bent over Hale, attaching monitors, checking vitals, shaking their heads at the impossibility before them. One of them whispered, "How the hell is he still alive?" "Because someone wanted him to. Look dead," Carter muttered. Ross caught his words, eyes narrowing, and they nearly succeeded. The paramedics lifted Hale carefully, sliding him onto the gurney. Anna clutched his hand, refusing to let go, her tears dripping onto the crisp hospital sheets. "I'm here, Robert. I'm here." The crowd parted as Hale was rushed out. Cameras flashed. Someone had already alerted the press. Norfolk City would wake to headlines it could barely believe. "Chief returns from the dead." But Carter knew the truth wasn't miraculous. It was calculated. Someone had tried to erase Robert Hale, and they had nearly pulled it off. Back in the near-empty hall, petals from trampled lilies lay strewn across the floor. Carter crouched beside Max, running a hand along the shepherd's neck. "You saved him, buddy," he whispered. "If it weren't for you, he'd be 6 feet under by now." Max pressed his head against Carter's chest, releasing a weary whine. Behind them, Parker's voice cut the quiet. "Detective, a word." Carter turned slowly. "Make it quick." Parker stepped closer, lowering his tone. "What you did back there, stopping the service, disrupting the community, that was reckless. You embarrassed this department." Carter held his stare. "If I hadn't, the chief would be buried alive, and you wanted that funeral rushed." "Care to explain why?" Parker's lips curled into a politician's smile. "Grief makes people irrational. I was trying to spare Anna unnecessary pain. That's all." "Funny," Carter replied, voice sharp as glass. "You didn't look very happy when you found out he was still breathing." For the briefest moment, Parker's mask slipped. A flicker of anger, fear, something raw. Then it was gone. He straightened his uniform and stalked toward the exit without another word. Carter exhaled slowly. The city had just witnessed a miracle. But beneath that miracle, shadows were stirring. Hours later, at Norfolk City General Hospital, Carter stood outside Hale's ICU room. Through the glass, he watched Anna sit at her husband's side, clutching his hand as machines hummed and beeped around him. Hale's body was battered, but his spirit, Carter knew, wasn't broken. Ross approached quietly. "He's stable for now, but whatever was in his system, it was sophisticated, not something you'd pick up on the street." Carter's jaw tightened. "So, someone with resources, someone who wanted him silent." Ross nodded grimly. "And if I'm right, the substance was meant to fool paramedics into calling it natural causes. No questions, no autopsy. Buried alive in plain sight," Carter murmured. Max whined softly at his side, as if confirming the thought. Carter rested a hand on the dog's head, his eyes never leaving Hale. "Don't worry, Chief," he whispered. "We'll find who did this, I promise." The machines kept their steady rhythm, the faint proof of life against all odds. And in that rhythm, Carter heard the beginning of something larger than any case he'd ever worked. A war. Part 2 Amperes. Operation Clean Sweep. Detective Carter had spent the night in the ICU waiting room, but he hadn't slept. His body ached with fatigue, his mind sharper than ever. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Chief Hale lying pale against white sheets, machines keeping his heart beating. And every time, he saw Parker's face in the funeral home, frozen, stricken, guilty. By dawn, Carter gave up on rest. He drove back to the precinct, the city still cloaked in morning haze. Norfolk City woke slowly, but the police station was already alive with chatter. Rumors of Hale's resurrection had spread like wildfire. Officers gathered in tight clusters, whispering as Carter passed. Their eyes followed him, some with awe, others with suspicion. He ignored them. His destination was Hale's office. The door creaked open to reveal a room still steeped in the chief's presence. Neat stacks of paperwork, the faint smell of pipe tobacco, medals hanging with military precision on the wall. Yet Carter saw disorder where others might not, files left out that Hale would have never abandoned. A desk drawer slightly ajar, a lamp still burning though no one had been there since the night of his collapse. Carter sat down, pulling the drawer open fully. Inside, he found what he had glimpsed before. Folders stamped confidential. Operation Clean Sweep. He spread them across the desk. Surveillance photographs of warehouses, coded transcripts from wiretaps, ledgers of money transfers. Hale had been building a case, but not against some street-level dealers. This was bigger, much bigger. Names leapt off the pages. Local politicians, business owners, even a judge. Every one of them tied, through shell companies and shadow accounts, to a network of drug trafficking and money laundering. Then, Carter's eyes froze on a ledger entry. Swiss account, balance, $200 million. $200 million. He blinked, read it again. That number wasn't just evidence of corruption. It was power. Enough to buy silence, to bend laws, to bury enemies. Pinned to the inside cover was the parchment he'd noticed before. Faded, brittle, marked with strange symbols, lines like rivers, dots like stars, numbers scribbled in Hale's hand. Carter smoothed it flat against the desk. It wasn't just a map, it was something older. Beneath Hale's handwriting, a note, not just money, history buried beneath this city, truth worth more than gold. Carter's pulse quickened. The door creaked again. He snapped the folder shut, hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. Anna stood in the doorway, her eyes rimmed red from sleeplessness. She clutched Hale's jacket against her chest like armor. "I had to see," she said softly. "This is where he worked late every night." Carter hesitated, then gestured her inside. She walked slowly, her hand brushing the desk as if touching her husband's presence. Her gaze fell on the ledger Carter hadn't managed to hide. Her face went pale. "Is that?" "Evidence," Carter said carefully. "Proof of what he was fighting." Anna pressed her lips together, trembling. "He told me once the past never stays buried. I thought he meant mistakes or grief. I didn't realize." She looked at Carter, tears brimming. "John, what is this really?" Carter opened the folder again, sliding the parchment toward her. "It's bigger than the drug case, bigger than money. He found something dangerous enough that someone tried to silence him for good." Anna's hands shook as she traced the faded ink. "Robert would never chase myths. If this mattered to him, it's real." Max padded forward, resting his head on her lap, his eyes dark with loyalty. She stroked his fur absently, whispering, "He saved Robert's life, and now maybe he'll save us too." Carter's phone buzzed, cutting the moment short. It was Officer Ramirez. "Detective, you'd better get back here. There's been a break-in. At the chief's house. The safe's open. Files are missing." Carter's stomach dropped. They were already moving to erase the trail. He shut the folder, slid it into his jacket, and stood. "Anna, stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but me." She reached for his hand, her grip fierce. "Bring him back to me, John. Bring Robert back whole. And don't let them bury the truth again." Carter nodded once. Max growled low, as if he too understood the oath being made. Then Carter left the office, the folder pressed against his side like a burning brand. Operation Clean Sweep wasn't just a case anymore. It was a war, and he was already in the middle of it. Part 2B, Break-In. Rain was falling again when Carter pulled up to Chief Hale's house. The modest brick home sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees, their leaves slick with water. But tonight, the place was anything but peaceful. A patrol car idled at the curb, lights flashing silently, casting red and blue shadows across the porch. Officer Ramirez met him at the door, her young face tight with worry. "Detective, it's bad." The back window was forced open. Whoever did this knew what they were looking for. Carter followed her inside. The living room was untouched. Photos of Robert and Anna on the walls, a knitted throw draped over the sofa. But as they moved down the hallway, the signs became clear. Footprints on the rug, muddy streaks across the floor, a faint smell of cologne that didn't belong. When they entered Hale's study, Carter's gut clenched. The safe, usually hidden behind a bookshelf, stood wide open. Papers were scattered across the floor, drawers yanked out, the careful order Hale always maintained reduced to chaos. "Anything left?" Carter asked. "Just scraps," Ramirez said, handing him a torn folder. "Most of it's gone. Witness saw a dark sedan peel out about an hour ago, but no plates." Carter crouched by the safe. His flashlight beam caught faint impressions inside rectangles where files had rested, a groove where a small box had been. Whoever broke in had moved with precision. They weren't looters. They were cleaners. Max sniffed the floor near the safe, his nose twitching. He barked once, sharp, then padded toward the desk. Carter followed. Beneath the desk, taped to the underside of the drawer, Max's teeth found something. He tugged until a small envelope fell free. Carter picked it up, heart pounding. Inside was a single flash drive, labeled in Hale's handwriting. "Clean sweep. Copy." Relief flickered in his chest. Hale had anticipated betrayal. He'd hidden a backup, but the relief didn't last, because outside, through the rain, Carter heard the low growl of an engine. Headlights swept across the curtains. "Ramirez," he said quietly, "we're not alone." The front door burst inward. 2 men in dark clothing stormed inside, weapons raised. "Down," one barked. Ramirez drew her sidearm, firing first. The crack of gunfire shattered the quiet. Carter dove behind the desk, pulling Max close. Bullets tore through the bookshelves, sending splinters raining down. Max lunged suddenly, his powerful body slamming one intruder to the ground. The man screamed as teeth sank into his arm. Carter fired at the second, his shot striking true. The intruder staggered back, cursing, before fleeing into the rain. The first man writhed, trying to shake Max off. Carter pressed his gun to the man's temple. "Who sent you?" The intruder spat blood, eyes blazing with defiance. "You think you can stop it? Clean sweep will wash you all away." Before Carter could press further, the man jerked violently. His body convulsed. Foam bubbled from his lips. Ramirez swore. Cyanide. Carter shoved Max off, rolling the man onto his back. But it was too late. The assassin's eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, lifeless. Max growled, pacing in tight circles, his fur bristling. Carter's hand tightened around the flash drive. They were willing to kill and to die to keep this buried. Ramirez's voice shook. "Detective, what the hell are we in the middle of?" Carter slipped the drive into his pocket. His mind replayed the intruder's words. "Clean sweep will wash you all away." "This isn't just a case," he said. "It's a purge, and we're the next targets." Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the roof like the ticking of a clock. The city wasn't just drowning in corruption anymore. It was preparing to burn. Part 2C, The Ledger. The storm eased by morning, but Norfolk City woke restless. News of Chief Hale's impossible survival had already spread beyond the city, drawing reporters and cameras like flies. Outside the hospital, vans lined the curb, their satellite dishes rising like skeletal fingers against the gray sky. Inside, the air hummed with tension officers, doctors, and journalists clashing over access to the man who had cheated death. Detective Carter wanted nothing to do with the circus. He kept to the shadows of the ICU hallway, Max pacing at his side, the flash drive from Hale's study weighing heavy in his pocket. Ramirez approached with 2 coffees, handing one to him. "Lab's ready to run the drive," she said quietly. "We set up in the basement evidence room. Fewer eyes." Carter nodded. "Let's move." The evidence room was dim, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing off concrete walls. A single computer sat on a metal table, disconnected from the precinct network. Ramirez booted it up while Carter closed the door behind them. Max settled near the entrance, ears alert. When the drive opened, file after file spilled across the screen. Financial ledgers, surveillance photos, transcripts. But one folder caught Carter's attention immediately. Accounts. Inside was a ledger far more detailed than the one he had found in Hale's office. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, coded transfers. The sums made his stomach tighten. Tens of millions. Hundreds. And there, near the bottom Swiss account, $200 million. Beneficiary. Pending. Ramirez leaned closer, her brow furrowing. That's more money than this city's entire annual budget. It's leverage, Carter muttered. You don't just hide $200 million. You use it to buy power, to erase enemies. Another folder was marked with a single word, map. Inside, scans of the same parchment Carter had seen, annotated in Hale's handwriting. Coordinates, cross-referenced with old survey records, land deeds dating back a century. This isn't just about drugs, Carter whispered. He was tracing something buried long before the cartel ever showed up. Ramirez glanced at him. What are you saying? A treasure? Not gold, not exactly, but something people are willing to kill for. Max whined softly, his nose nudging Carter's hand, as if urging him onward. Carter copied the files to a second drive, pocketing it before shutting everything down. Just as the screen went dark, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful. Ramirez froze. We locked the door. Carter gestured for silence. Max was already growling low. His body pressed to the floor, muscles taut. The handle rattled once, twice. Then a voice. Detective Carter? It's Parker. We need to talk. Carter and Ramirez exchanged a glance. Not here, Carter called back. I'll find you later. Now, Parker insisted. His voice was tight, impatient. You're making a mistake, shutting me out. If we're not careful, this entire department burns with Hale. Ramirez mouthed silently. He knows. Carter's pulse quickened. He slipped the drive deeper into his jacket. Chief Hale trusted me, Carter said through the door. And right now, I trust Max more than anyone else in this building. Walk away, Parker. Silence. Then the faint sound of retreating footsteps. But Carter knew it wasn't over. That night, Carter sat in his car outside the hospital, rain streaking the windshield, the ledger heavy in his thoughts. Max lay curled in the passenger seat, his tail thumping softly whenever Carter's hand brushed his fur. Carter spoke aloud, more to himself than to the dog. If Hale's right, this isn't just corruption. It's history. And that money? It's the key. Max lifted his head. Brown eyes, steady, loyal. Carter exhaled, gripping the wheel. All right, partner. We're in this together. We follow the Present trail, no matter where it leads. Because somewhere beneath Norfolk City's streets, hidden under decades of lies and blood, was a secret. And now, Carter knew every step closer meant war. Part 2D, The Warning. The hospital grew quiet after midnight. The reporters had packed up their cameras. The officers pulled back their cordon, leaving only a skeleton crew and the hum of fluorescent lights. Carter remained, unwilling to leave Chief Hale unguarded. Max lay near his boots, half asleep but always listening. Carter reviewed the ledger again, under the dim glow of a desk lamp. The numbers were staggering. Offshore accounts, false fronts, even property holdings tucked under the names of dead men. Every entry whispered of betrayal at the highest levels. And at the heart of it all, the $200 million account, waiting like a fuse unlit. A soft knock at the door jolted him. He slid the drive into his pocket before opening it. Doctor. Ross stepped in, her coat draped loosely over her shoulders. You're still awake, she said. So are you. I've been running more tests, she explained. Chief Hale's condition, it doesn't match natural cardiac arrest. The compound in his blood is synthetic, engineered. Something meant to slow vitals until he appeared dead. It's precise. Military precise. Carter frowned. You're saying this wasn't just poison. It was a staged death. Ross nodded grimly. And if you hadn't stopped the burial, it would have been permanent. Her words sank deep. Carter rubbed a hand over his face. Whoever did this wasn't trying to send a message. They were trying to erase him. Ross hesitated, then handed him a small envelope. Inside was a lab printout. At the bottom, circled in red, was a faint residue marker, the signature of the compound. In federal case files, it's used by cartels, but the formula, it came from somewhere higher. Before Carter could respond, Max shot to his feet, growling toward the hallway. Ross stiffened. What is it? The sound of footsteps, deliberate, too slow for nurses. Carter motioned her back, drawing. And his weapon. The door handle turned. Detective, Parker's voice oozed through the gap. Still playing watchdog? Carter's grip tightened. Somebody has to. I came to check on the chief, Parker said smoothly. We can't let rumors destroy this department. Rumors? Carter snapped. He was almost buried alive. That's not a rumor. That's attempted murder. Parker chuckled softly. You've always been dramatic. Max snarled, teeth bared, body ready to spring. Carter opened the door just enough to meet Parker's eyes. You push this, Parker, and you'll answer for it. Stay away from Hale. The deputy chief's smile faltered, his gaze flicking toward the faint glow of the desk lamp inside. Careful, Carter. Some doors you can't close once they're opened. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the sterile hall. Ross exhaled, shaken. He's hiding something. He's part of it, Carter said darkly. I can feel it. Later, Carter finally allowed himself a moment outside. The rain had stopped, the air heavy with damp earth. Max padded beside him, ears still twitching at every sound. Carter lit a cigarette, the first in months, watching the smoke curl upward. He thought about the ledger, the map, the word scrawled in Hale's hand. Not just money, truth worth more than gold. It wasn't just corruption. It wasn't just politics. It was something buried in Norfolk City, something tied to the fortune waiting in Switzerland, and someone, maybe Parker, maybe higher, was willing to kill Hale, Carter, and anyone else to keep it hidden. Max nudged his hand, grounding him. Carter dropped the cigarette, grinding it under his heel. All right, partner, he murmured. We don't back down now. Behind them, the hospital lights glowed faint against the horizon. Ahead lay shadows, secrets, and blood. Operation Clean Sweep had only just begun. And Carter knew he and Max were standing on the fault line of a war that would shake the city to its core. Part 3 Amperes, the Midnight Visitor. Norfolk City slept uneasily that night, but Carter did not. He remained in the hospital, pacing the dim corridors with Max shadowing his every step. The glow of vending machines and the steady hum of fluorescent lights were his only companions. He knew danger hadn't passed. It was circling, waiting. Near midnight, Carter returned to Hale's room. Anna was asleep in a chair by the bed, her hand curled around her husband's. The steady beep of the heart monitor was a fragile reminder that Hale still clung to life. Carter stood guard at the door, Max lying at his feet like a sentry carved from muscle and loyalty. That was when Carter heard a faint creak, like a hinge protesting. His hand moved instantly to his holster. Max's ears shot up, a low growl vibrating from his chest. The sound came again. From the far end of the corridor, a shadow detached itself from the darkness, moving with eerie calm. Police, Carter barked. Show your hands. The figure froze, then stepped into the pale light. A man, mid-50s, tailored coat, posture straight as a soldier. His face was partially hidden beneath the brim of a hat, but his eyes glinted sharp, calculating. My apologies, the stranger said smoothly, voice carrying the faintest trace of an accent. I didn't mean to startle you. I came to pay respects to an old friend. Carter kept his gun leveled. Visiting hours ended hours ago. Name. The man smiled faintly. James Marshall, Robert Hale and I served together years ago. Max's growl deepened, hackles rising. Funny, Carter said, his tone like steel. In all the years I've known Hale, I've never heard that name. People forget, Marshall replied softly. But dogs rarely do. His eyes flicked toward Max with something like disdain or fear. State your business and leave, Carter ordered. Marshall spread his hands, moving slowly. I only wish to see him one last time. You can wish from a distance, Carter snapped. For a moment their eyes locked. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of predators. Then Marshall inclined his head. Very well, detective. But remember, truth often lies where no one dares to dig. With that, he turned, his footsteps echoing as he vanished into the shadows from which he came. Carter's pulse hammered. He lowered his weapon only when Max's growls subsided. But unease remained. Whoever James Marshall was, he hadn't come to mourn. He'd come to check if Hale was still breathing. Carter spent the rest of the night restless. He couldn't shake Marshall's cryptic words, nor the cold glint in his eyes. He returned to Hale's office files, replaying every note, every ledger entry. The Swiss account, the parchment map, the strange symbols marking something older than the city itself. It all pointed to one conclusion. Hale had uncovered more than corruption. He had stumbled into a secret people would kill to protect. By dawn, Carter's instincts screamed louder than ever. He needed answers, and not just from files. He needed to follow the trail Hale had left behind. Max pressed against his side as if sensing the weight of the decision. Carter ruffled the shepherd's fur, murmuring, "Guess we're going digging, partner." Later that morning, Carter briefed Ramirez in the hospital cafeteria, their voices low over steaming coffee. James Marshall, Carter said, claims he knew Hale, the kind of man who doesn't leave footprints when he walks. Max reacted like he'd smelled rot. Ramirez frowned. You think he's tied to clean sweep? I think he's tied to something bigger. And if he's here, it means we're running out of time. Ramirez glanced around the room, lowering her voice further. There's chatter. Some officers think you staged the whole funeral stunt. That you're manipulating Anna? That you're... Enough, Carter. Cut her off. His voice was sharp, but his eyes were tired. This isn't about me. It's about the chief. It's about a city rotting from the top down. Ramirez studied him, then nodded. So where do we start? Carter pulled the flash drive from his pocket, setting it on the table between them. We find the truth Hale was chasing, and we dig until we hit the bones. Max rested his chin on Carter's knee, brown eyes steady. The storm had only just begun. And Carter knew before it ended, Norfolk City would bleed. Part 3B. Echoes of the Past. The next day, Carter stood in Hale's study once more, the morning light streaming through half-drawn curtains. Dust hung in the air like memory. The room a shrine to discipline rows of case files, commendations framed with military precision, and the faint lingering scent of tobacco. But beneath the order lay secrets. Carter was certain of it. He began pulling books from the shelves, running his hands along the spines, searching for irregularities. Max followed close, sniffing at the carpet, occasionally whining when Carter lingered too long. Come on, boy, Carter muttered. If Hale hid something, he trusted you to find it. The shepherd nosed toward the far corner, pawing at the baseboard. Carter crouched. A small seam caught the light nearly invisible, unless you knew where to look. He pried it open, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside, wrapped in oilskin, was a bundle of documents. Carter unfolded them on the desk. Inside were maps, old city surveys from the 1,800 seconds, marked with Hale's sharp handwriting. Red circles traced locations across Norfolk City, abandoned warehouses, drainage tunnels, the old rail yard. And at the bottom corner, a symbol Carter had seen on the parchment from Hale's office, a cross within a circle, surrounded by faint, star-like dots. Max barked once, as if confirming the find. Carter leaned back, exhaling slowly. Hale hadn't just been following the cartel. He had been following Norfolk City's history itself. That afternoon, Carter met Ramirez at a quiet diner on the edge of town. The place smelled of fried bacon and burnt coffee, the booths worn from decades of truckers and shift workers. It was safe, neutral ground. He slid the maps across the table. Hale was tracing something buried beneath Norfolk City, not just the cartel's cash, something older. Ramirez studied the pages, her brow furrowed. These surveys, they're pre-Civil War. Why would Hale care about land? Records this old? Because the cartel does, Carter replied. He tapped one of the red circles. Every location here ties to one of their fronts. Warehouses, laundromats, fake charities. They're not random. They're built on top of something. On top of what? That's what we're going to find out. Ramirez lowered her voice. Carter, this is dangerous. We're already targets. If Parker catches wind, we're chasing ghosts. Carter cut her off, his voice hard. Hale nearly died for this. I'm not letting it end in shadows. Max stirred under the booth, his eyes sharp, listening as though he understood every word. When they left the diner, Carter spotted a black SUV parked across the street. Its windows were tinted, engine idling. He felt the weight of unseen eyes. Don't look, he murmured to Ramirez. We've got company. They climbed into Carter's car. Max jumped into the back seat, alert. Carter pulled out, keeping his speed steady. The SUV followed at a distance. Through the rearview mirror, Carter caught a glimpse of the driver. A man with pale hair, jaw clenched tight. Not a local cop. Not cartel muscle. Something else. They're watching us, Ramirez whispered. Let them watch, Carter said, his jaw set. We'll give them something to see. He cut across traffic, weaving through Norfolk City's streets until he reached the riverfront. Old warehouses loomed ahead, relics of the city's industrial past. Carter killed the engine and waited. The SUV slowed, then drove past without stopping. They're not ready to move yet, Carter muttered. They just want us to know we're not alone. Ramirez glanced at him. And now? Carter looked at Max, then back at the maps. Now we dig. That night, beneath the flicker of a single work lamp, Carter spread the documents across his kitchen table. The symbol burned in his mind, a cross within a circle, like a compass pointing nowhere and everywhere. He traced the lines with his finger. They converged on one spot, the old rail yard on the edge of town. Max whined, nudging Carter's hand. Yeah, boy, Carter whispered. That's where it starts. The ledger, the map, the symbols. They weren't just pointing to money. They were pointing to a secret buried in Norfolk City's bones. And Carter knew, if he dug deep enough, he might uncover the truth, or he might never climb back out.